Welcome back. Well, right now I'm talking to Rick Cohen. Rick is the sales director for the Village Retirement Group. Rick, thanks very much for having us here today at the Village Coorparoo. We've been very, very impressed with how it's, and we've spoken to some of the people here. They just love it.
Yeah. Yes, it's a great village. It's wonderful. I've been involved since before we started building, and this village is probably the most successful retirement village in Queensland.
Why is that, Rick?
Well, the location is great. We sourced a lot of our residents came from within 1.5 kilometres of the area.
Is that typical?
This is a locational village, yes. Maybe sometimes it's within the 3 kilometres, but here, because it's more high density, right, a lot of people just came from the area. They didn't want to move out of the area because they love the area. Right? And for a locational village, yes, it is typical that you'll get most of your sales from 3 kilometres away, a circle around the village. Right.
While we were waiting to talk to you, I noticed that you were showing some people around here, a family.
Yes.
It must be difficult for them to make that final decision. How do you help them do that?
The most important thing is full disclosure. If people know what they can do, what we can offer in the way of the unit for one thing, how big it is, does it suit their needs, is the orientation right, but also we are selling a lifestyle, not just a unit, right? We are selling a lifestyle. So I have to talk them through what they can do within the village, what services they can access, what facilities they can access, and what social aspects they can look forward to becoming involved in our village here. And that's probably more important than the actual unit. The unit is just the vehicle to the lifestyle. Right, and that's really important.
Do they understand that, do you think? Or does it take a while for you to...
Yeah, it does take a little time for them to realise that, because they're coming out of a home and they're looking at accommodation initially, right? But when you take them around the village and they see the residents within the village and everyone's saying hello, and you can see smiles on people's faces, they realise. And I always say, come back as many times as you like. Come back and have lunch with us so you can actually see for yourself what the village is like, because I can tell you, but you have to experience it. Yeah.
When we spoke to Michael and Justin earlier in the show, it became quite evident that it's a culture that they've built, not just in this village, but in the group itself. That must be hard for you to explain that to people.
Yes, it is. We are lucky because Justin and Michael, it's a family company, right? And they live their business, right? And they are not scared to get people who know more than them about different aspects of their business. We have a great team of managers, village managers, and the team they build underneath them is really good. They are very dedicated. It's getting the right mix of a good manager, good admin staff, and also providing a lot of services and activities for the residents. We initiate it, but the residents tend to run it themselves, right? Building the culture is interesting.
It takes a long time.
It takes a long time, or it can happen pretty quickly. It depends on the openness of the people working in the village, and and how our residents are treated. Our residents are never treated as old people. Our residents are treated as people, and there's a big difference in the psychology of reaction of people when you treat them as a person.
It struck me when I was talking to Michael and Justin earlier in the show that experience they had when they were coming down the range from Toowoomba, and someone had said to them, "Thank you because you've changed my life, or you've made my life, much better." That's the start of the culture. That's what, and that culture was created without them even really knowing about it.
Yes, it's really interesting. It's how you interact with the people, because we're different from general real estate. When we sell to a client, our future resident, and when they become a resident, we are here. So we have to be open. We have to have full disclosure, and we have to. It doesn't finish when you pay your money. we
It's a
are part of your,
relationship.
it's a relationship that develops as your resident. We've got people that, our first resident's still here, right? And that's 7.5 years ago. And at the same at Yeronga, the first residents are there. And you rarely ever get people moving out of one of our villages because of the culture, and which is great.
Rick, you've worked in many of the villages
Yes.
Over the years, and you've helped a lot of people come reach this decision. What have you found are the most important considerations for anyone watching this? They're thinking, well, maybe I'd like to do this, but they just don't know what they need to consider.
I think the most important thing is there are a lot of lonely people in the world living in suburbia, because 40 years ago, each street had its own culture.
Yes.
Because ladies stayed home, the kids grew up together, and it was a culture within the street and a culture within the suburb. Now with more people, two-income families, people working, going out, in a lot of situations now, there's maybe 1 or 2 people living or during the day are in the street, whereas a lot of lonely people, they hardly see anyone. A lot of people now don't know their neighbours, right? Whereas here, they know their neighbours. They know that they can go down and have a cup of coffee. And so just letting them know that there is a social life, right? Instead of being the old person in the street, they're Michael, or they're Julie, or they're Wendy, or they're Mavis, right? They are a person, they're not the old person in the street.
Yeah, which brings me to the next question that I wanted to ask you about, and that is about your tips on moving. And when people are making this consideration, they're leaving a home that they've probably lived in for 50 years, they've raised a family in it,
Yes.
Lots of memories, and possibly even overcluttered. So what are your tips for people wanting to downsize?
We do a lot of, in our new villages, our developing villages, we do a lot of pre-selling, right? So people have bought before their unit is ready. And so they have a period of maybe 6 months or 9 months sometimes, and we have lunches every month or so. And what I keep saying to them is, you've got to downsize. To downsize, doing it a month before you put it on the market is no way to do it, because you'll be stressed, right? And it's too hard. So I say, you've got 9 months, you've got 6 months, or you've got 4 months. Do one room every fortnight. Have a look at that room and just say, okay, what don't I need here? And look to dispose of it. Now, disposal could be give the family back the stuff they left when they moved out.
Like the dog?
Like the dog, yeah, or like the, the report from grade 1 and things like that.
Yes, of course.
See if you can donate it to a worthy charity, right? So they can, old clothes, furniture, things like that, that are good, still usable, charities will accept them. If you can't do that, right, then a lot of people are putting it on Gumtree. Right? It's amazing, on the social networks. And if you've got a 14-year-old grandchild, they'll be able to show you how to do it. Sure. And you can make a little bit of extra money rather than having a garage sale. People still have garage sales, but it's amazing what you can sell on Gumtree.
Yeah.
But also, just progressively get rid of your stuff until you clean up the house. So then you can get an agent to come in, right, and they can see what your house is really like. No one will buy a house that's fully cluttered, because they can't see
it.
themselves living there.
And I love that piece of advice about moving it out over a period of time, because the decision sometimes to give stuff away is really hard.
Oh, it is. But if it's going to a good cause, right, such as charity, or if it's the local school fete, or if it's on Gumtree, right, then it becomes a bit easier. I always recommend to people, you're going from a 4-bedroom home to a 3-bedroom unit, or a 4-bedroom home to a 2-bedroom unit. You cannot bring everything. Choose 3 or 4 pieces that you cannot live without. It may be an old dresser, it may be a table that you and your husband or your grandmother gave you, right? Keep those 3 or 4 pieces if you want, and build around that, right? I've had a lot of people say, I haven't had new furniture for 50 years, I'm going to do it, right?
Yes.
And so it's a new start, and that's what they do. And they just say, let's get rid of this. And it's a hard decision. The hardest thing in the process of moving is actually not the moving. It's making the decision, we are going to move. Once you make that decision, then you can have a plan to get the move going.
Rick, I want to thank you very much. I can see why you're so successful and have been over the years at helping so many people make this decision. So thank you very much for spending some time with us and sharing some of your wisdom. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.